The stars had always seemed peaceful to Commander Jack Sullivan. He had spent 20 years sailing through the black void of space, and in all that time, he had never grown tired of looking at them. Tonight, standing on the bridge of the human flagship USS Resolute, he watched them twinkle through the massive viewing window and felt a strange calm settle over him. That calm was about to be shattered. "Commander, we have an incoming transmission," said Lieutenant Katie Morrison from her station. Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. A hint of worry. "It's coming from the Valori Dominion. Priority channel." Sullivan turned away from the window. The Valori Dominion was the most powerful force in the galaxy. They controlled 17 different species and had ruled the stars for over 50,000 years. Humanity, by comparison, was a newcomer. They had only joined the galactic community 30 years ago, and they occupied just 12 small colony worlds on the outer edge of known space. "Put it through," Sullivan ordered. The main screen flickered to life, and Sullivan felt his stomach drop. The face that appeared was not one of the minor officials humanity usually dealt with. This was High Arbiter Zelkoth himself, the supreme leader of the Dominion. Zelkoth was an insectoid creature, tall and terrifying. His body was covered in dark armor-like plates, and his head featured 4 gleaming eyes that seemed to look right through you. When he spoke, his mandibles clicked together in a way that made a horrible sound. "Humans," Zelkoth began, his voice cold and filled with contempt. "Your presence in this galaxy has been tolerated long enough. The Dominion has decided that your species is a threat to galactic stability." Sullivan's hands tightened into fists at his sides, but he kept his face calm. "High Arbiter, humanity has done nothing to threaten anyone. We have followed every law. We have respected every border. Your existence is the threat," Zelkoth replied. "Your species breeds too quickly. You expand too fast. You ask too many questions and reach too far. The Dominion will not wait for you to become a true danger." The High Arbiter leaned closer to the screen. His 4 eyes seemed to glow with cruel satisfaction. "You have 1 standard galactic week to surrender all your colonies. Dismantle your fleet and submit your entire species to permanent servitude under Dominion control. If you refuse, we will come for you, and we will not stop until every last human is dead or in chains." The transmission ended. The screen went dark. For a long moment, no one on the bridge spoke. Sullivan could hear the soft hum of the ship's engines, the quiet beeping of various instruments. Normal sounds that now seemed to come from a different world. A world that had existed just moments ago, before everything changed. "Sir," Katie Morrison said quietly, "I recorded everything." Sullivan nodded slowly. His mind was racing, trying to process what had just happened. The Dominion had just declared war on humanity, not because humans had done anything wrong, but simply because they existed. "Send that recording to Earth Command immediately," Sullivan ordered. "Maximum encryption. Tell them we need an emergency council." As Katie worked at her station, Sullivan walked back to the window. The stars looked the same as they always had. Beautiful, peaceful, but now they seemed colder somehow, more distant. Out there, somewhere in that vast darkness, the Dominion was preparing to destroy everything humanity had built, 8,000 light years away. On Earth, Admiral Nathan Cole received the transmission in his private office. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes, but those eyes turned sharp and hard as he watched Zelkoth deliver his ultimatum. When the recording ended, Cole sat in silence for exactly 30 seconds. He was not a man who made decisions quickly. He thought things through. He considered every option, but this time, he already knew what had to be done. He picked up his secure communication device and called, a number that only 5 people on Earth knew existed. The voice that answered was young and eager. "Dr. Bennett's lab." This is Admiral Cole. I need to speak with Dr. Bennett immediately. Authorization code Omega 77. There was a pause. Then a new voice came on the line. Female, calm, intelligent. Admiral Cole, I assume something has happened. The Dominion has declared war on us. We have 1 week before they attack. He heard Dr. Laura Bennett take a sharp breath. 1 week. That's not enough time. I know, Cole said. That's why I'm authorizing the full unsealing of Site Zero. Everything. No more restrictions. No more careful study. Whatever is down there, we need it ready for war. There was a long pause. When Bennett spoke again, her voice was different. Excited. Scared. Both at the same time. Admiral, you know we still don't understand half of what we found. Those weapons, those machines, they're older than anything we've ever seen. Older than the Dominion. Older than any civilization in recorded galactic history. We don't know who made them or why they left them on Earth. I know, Cole repeated. But right now, they're the only chance humanity has. 300 years ago, miners digging beneath the Nevada desert had found something impossible. A vast underground complex filled with technology that should not exist. The structures were made from materials that human science could not identify. The weapons stored inside them produced energy signatures that broke every known law of physics. The government had sealed the site immediately. For 3 centuries, teams of scientists had studied the artifacts in secret, learning what they could, understanding almost nothing. The technology was too advanced. It was like showing a smartphone to a caveman. But some things they had learned. They had learned that the weapons responded to human touch in ways they did not respond to machines or animals. They had learned that the energy cells never ran out, no matter how much they were used. They had learned that whoever had built these things had done so with human hands in mind. Now, as Dr. Bennett led her team into the deepest levels of Site Zero, she wondered if they were about to find out why the complex stretched for miles beneath the desert. Most of it had never been fully explored. But at the very center, behind doors that had taken 50 years to open, there was a chamber that Bennett had only visited once before. Inside that chamber were weapons. Thousands of them. And behind those weapons, carved into the wall in letters that seemed to glow with inner light, was a message in a language that no human should have been able to read. But somehow, Bennett could read it. She had always been able to read it from the first moment she had seen it. The message said, "For our children. For the day they come for you." Bennett felt a chill run down her spine. Whoever had built this place, whoever had left these weapons, they had known this day would come. They had prepared for it. The galaxy had declared war on humanity. They had no idea what they had started. The colony of New Athens was a beautiful world. It had blue oceans, green forests, and cities that shone like silver under twin suns. 3 million humans called it home. They had built farms and schools and hospitals. They had raised families and planted trees and dreamed of a peaceful future among the stars. None of them knew that future was about to be tested. Captain Derek Grant stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon and watched the sensor display with growing dread. The numbers kept climbing. 100 enemy ships. Then 150. Then 200. "Final count," said Lieutenant Samantha Price, his tactical officer. Her voice was flat, controlled, but her hands were shaking slightly as she worked her console. 312 Dominion warships. Battlecruisers, destroyers, fighters. A full invasion fleet. Grant closed his eyes for a moment. The human defensive force at New Athens consisted of 40 ships. 40 against 300. The math was simple. The outcome was certain. How long until they reached weapons range? Grant asked. 4 hours. 4 hours. That was all the time 3 million people had left. Grant opened a channel to the planet below. The face of Governor Marcus Webb appeared on screen. He was a young man, too young for a job like this, but he had been elected because he was honest and kind. Right now, his honest, kind face was pale with fear. "Captain Grant, tell me you have a plan." "I'm working on it, Governor." "Begin evacuation procedures. Get as many people to the emergency shelters as you can. If we fail up here..." Grant paused. He did not want to finish that sentence. "Just get them to safety." He ended the call and turned to face his crew. 40 men and women, all of them looking at him, all of them waiting for orders, all of them knowing they were probably going to die. "Listen to me," Grant said. "I know what the numbers say. I know what the odds are. But those are our people down there. Our families. Our friends. We swore an oath to protect them, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Whatever happens today, we do not run. We do not surrender. We fight until we can't fight anymore." The crew answered with silence. Not the silence of defeat, but the silence of acceptance. They understood what was being asked of them. Then the communication console lit up with an urgent signal. Katie Morrison's voice came through from the USS Resolute, which was stationed at the edge of the system. "All ships, this is a priority transmission from Earth Command. Prepare to receive emergency cargo via hyperlight drone. Authorization code, Contingency 7. Grant frowned. "Contingency 7? I've never heard of that." "Neither have I, sir," Price admitted. "But whatever it is, it's coming fast. Hyperlight drones are entering the system now. One for each ship." Outside the viewing window, Grant saw a flash of light as a small, unmanned vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel and headed directly toward the horizon. Within minutes, it had docked with their cargo bay. "Sir," came the voice of Chief Engineer Paul Carter from below decks. "You need to see this." Grant hurried down to the cargo bay. What he found there made him stop dead in his tracks. The drone had delivered a single large crate. It was made from a metal that seemed to shift colors as Grant looked at it. On its surface were symbols that looked almost like letters, but not from any alphabet Grant recognized. When Carter opened the crate, a soft golden light spilled out. Inside were weapons. Rifles, pistols, devices that Grant could not identify. And at the bottom, connected to what looked like installation cables, was a large piece of machinery covered in the same strange symbols. "What is this?" Grant whispered. A message played from a small speaker attached to the crate. It was Admiral Cole's voice. "To all ship commanders. What you have received is classified. Technology from Site Zero. The devices in these crates are weapons and ship upgrades of unknown origin. We do not fully understand how they work, but we know that they work. Install the upgrade modules into your main weapon systems. Arm your crews with the handheld weapons. And may God help us all." The message ended. Grant looked at Carter. Carter looked at Grant. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. "Well," Carter finally said, "I guess we better get to work." It took 2 hours to install the upgrade module into the Horizon's main cannon. Carter had to bypass half the ship's normal systems to make it fit, and even then, the integration was rough. The sensors kept glitching. The power readings made no sense. But when they ran a test fire at empty space, the beam that shot from the cannon was brighter and more powerful than anything Grant had ever seen. Energy output increased by... "I can't even read this number," Price reported, staring at her console in disbelief. "Sir, if these readings are accurate, we just went from throwing stones to throwing mountains." The Dominion fleet entered weapons range exactly on schedule. Admiral Zhelkoth himself led the attack, sitting on the bridge of his massive flagship, confident that this battle would be over before it truly began. He had crushed dozens of primitive species before. Humans would be no different. "All ships," Zhelkoth ordered. Begin the attack. Leave no survivors. The Dominion fleet surged forward, weapons charging. 300 ships against 40. It should have been a slaughter. It was. Just not the one Jelkoth expected. The Horizon fired first. The upgraded cannon released a beam of golden light that crossed the distance between the fleets in an instant. It struck the first Dominion battlecruiser directly in the center. The ship did not explode. It did not break apart. It simply ceased to exist, turned into dust that scattered across the void. The beam kept going. It hit a second ship, then a third, then a fourth, fifth, sixth. 6 Dominion battlecruisers, the pride of their fleet, gone in a single shot. Jelkoth screamed orders at his commanders. The Dominion ships scattered, trying to avoid the golden beams that were now coming from every human vessel. But there was no avoiding them. The beams moved too fast. They hit too hard. Wherever they touched, Dominion ships died. The battle lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, the Dominion fleet had been reduced to scattered debris floating in the darkness of space. Not a single enemy ship remained. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. On the bridge of the Horizon, Captain Grant stared at the sensor display in complete shock. The numbers told him what had happened, but his mind refused to believe it. Did we just win? Price asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I think so, Grant replied. He turned to look at the crate from Site Zero, still sitting in the cargo bay below. I think we just changed everything. Across the galaxy, Admiral Jelkoth received the battle report on his flagship, which had barely escaped the slaughter. His 4 eyes read the data again and again, unable to accept what he was seeing. For the first time in his long life, Jelkoth felt true fear. The humans had weapons that should not exist. Weapons that no primitive species should possess. Weapons that reminded him of old stories. Ancient legends that his people had told for thousands of generations. Stories about the beings who had ruled the galaxy before time itself. Stories about the architects. The Dominion Council Chamber was the largest room in the galaxy. It had been built 10,000 years ago on the capital world of Velthera, carved from a single mountain of black crystal. Its walls rose so high that clouds formed near the ceiling. Its floor could hold 1 million beings at once. Today, it held only a few hundred. The leaders of all 17 Dominion species had gathered for an emergency meeting, and the fear in the room was thick enough to taste. Admiral Jelkoth stood before them, his proud posture now broken. His 4 eyes no longer gleamed with confidence. Instead, they darted nervously from face to face as he played the recording of the Battle of New Athens. The assembled leaders watched in horrified silence as human weapons tore through. Their finest warships like they were made of paper. 300 ships, gone in 12 minutes, against a force less than 1/7 their size. When the recording ended, the chamber exploded into chaos. Species that had been enemies for centuries shouted at each other. Leaders who usually spoke with calm authority screamed accusations and demands. Some called for immediate surrender. Others called for total war. No one could agree on anything except that something terrible had happened. Then a voice cut through the noise. It was not loud, but it carried a weight that silenced everyone. I know those weapons. All heads turned to the speaker. He was a crystalline being named Vorath, a member of a species so ancient that they had watched the Dominion rise from nothing. Vorath had lived for 9,000 years. He had seen empires born and die. He had witnessed events that others only read about in history books. And right now, he looked afraid. That energy signature, Vorath continued, his crystal body flickering with inner light. I have seen it before, once, long ago, in the ruins on the dead world of Calith Prime. The chamber fell completely silent. Everyone knew about Calith Prime. It was a planet at the edge of the galaxy, a world that had been burned to bare rock millions of years before any current species had evolved. Scientists had studied its ruins for thousands of years. They had never found answers, only questions. The ruins on Kelith Prime were built by the architects, Forrest said. And the weapons those humans used carry the same energy signature as the artifacts we found there. The word spread through the chamber like a disease. Architects. The architects. The name that every child in the galaxy learned to fear before they learned to walk. No one knew exactly who the architects had been. The records were too old, too fragmented. But the evidence of their power was everywhere. They had built structures that defied physics. They had moved planets and stars like pieces on a game board. They had created life itself, seeding worlds with organisms designed to grow and evolve. And then, 60 million years ago, they had vanished, gone without a trace. Some believed they had ascended to a higher plane of existence. Others believed they had destroyed themselves. Most simply tried not to think about them at all, because thinking about the architects meant thinking about how small and weak every other species truly was. That's impossible, Shelka said, his voice shaking. The architects disappeared millions of years before humans even existed. They couldn't have left weapons for humans. Humans are nothing. They're primitive. They're insects. Voreth's crystalline head turned slowly to face the High Arbiter. And yet their primitive weapons just destroyed your fleet in 12 minutes. Perhaps you should reconsider your definition of nothing, far across the galaxy. On Earth, Dr. Laura Bennett was having a very long day. The Site Zero complex had become a hive of activity. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, they all rushed through the underground halls, trying to understand the technology they were sending to the front lines. Bennett directed them as best she could, but her mind was elsewhere. She kept thinking about the chamber, the deepest chamber, the one behind the doors that had taken 50 years to open, the one with the weapons and a message carved into the wall. She had been back there a dozen times since the war began, and each time she noticed something new. Today, she noticed the second door. It was hidden behind a panel in the corner, so perfectly camouflaged that Bennett had walked past it 100 times without seeing it. But this time, something had changed. The panel was glowing faintly, pulsing with soft golden light. Bennett approached it slowly. She placed her hand against the surface. The panel slid open. Behind it was a corridor, long, straight, leading down into darkness. Bennett grabbed a flashlight and began to walk. She knew she should call for backup. She knew she should follow protocol. But something was pulling her forward, a feeling she could not explain, a sense that she was supposed to be here. The corridor ended in a small circular room. The walls were covered in the same strange writing as the main chamber, but here there was more, much more. Entire paragraphs, entire pages, stretching from floor to ceiling. And in the center of the room, floating in a beam of light, was a single crystal. Bennett approached it. The crystal was about the size of her fist, and it seemed to contain a galaxy within it. Stars swirled inside, tiny points of light dancing in endless patterns. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. She reached out and touched it. Information flooded her mind. She saw the galaxy as it had been 60 million years ago. She saw the architects, beings of light and thought and impossible power. She saw them create worlds, build civilizations, tend to life across 1 billion planets. She saw them happy. She saw them proud. Then she saw something else, a darkness at the edge of the galaxy, a silence that swallowed everything it touched. It came from beyond the stars, from the void between galaxies, from somewhere that even the architects could not understand. It consumed everything. It could not be fought. It could not be stopped. It could only be delayed. The architects knew they would lose. So they made a plan. They could not defeat the silence, but they could prepare for its return. They seeded the galaxy with hidden caches of their technology. They created species that could one day evolve to use it. And on one small blue planet, they did something special. They created humans thought not just as another species, as heirs, as children. Humans carried architect DNA in every cell. They were designed to grow, to learn, to eventually become what the architects had been. The weapons responded to human touch because they were made for human hands. Hands that were, at the deepest genetic level, identical to those that had forged them. The architects had not disappeared. They had changed. They had become human. Their consciousness was scattered across billions of minds, sleeping, waiting for the day when it would be needed again. And now that day had come. Bennett pulled her hand back from the crystal. She was breathing hard. Tears were streaming down her face. The truth was too big, too overwhelming, too impossible to accept, but she had to accept it. Because the galaxy was at war, and humanity needed to know who they really were. She picked up her communicator and called Admiral Cole. "Admiral," she said, her voice steady despite everything. "I found something. Something that changes everything. You need to come down here. Now." There was a pause. Then Cole's voice, tired and worried. "What did you find, Doctor?" Bennett looked at the crystal in her hand. She looked at the writing on the walls. She thought about the architects, about the silence, about a plan 60 million years in the making. "I found out who we are," she said. "And I found out why they're afraid of us." Admiral Cole stood in the hidden chamber beneath Site Zero, staring at the crystal that had changed everything. Around him stood the most powerful leaders on Earth. Presidents, generals, scientists. All of them had watched Dr. Bennett share what she had learned. All of them were struggling to understand. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said General Patricia Howard, the highest-ranking military officer on the planet. Her voice was calm, but her hands were clasped tightly behind her back. "You're telling us that humans are not actually from Earth, that we were created by ancient beings called architects, that we have their DNA inside us, and that we are, in some way, the same species as the creatures who built all of this." Bennett nodded. "That's correct, General. And these architects," Howard continued, "they left because something was coming. Something they called the silence. Something they couldn't defeat. Also correct." Howard closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, there was something new in her expression. Not fear, acceptance. "Then I suppose we better figure out how to use what they left us." Admiral Cole stepped forward. He had been quiet throughout Bennett's presentation, thinking, planning. Now he was ready to speak. "The crystal contains more than just history," Cole said. "It has coordinates, locations of other architect facilities across Earth, facilities we never knew existed. The one in Nevada was just the beginning." He turned to face the assembled leaders. "Over the past 6 hours, we have sent teams to investigate these coordinates. What they found changes everything we thought we knew about our own planet." On the main display screen, images began to appear. A massive underground complex beneath the mountains of Tibet, filled with ships so large they made aircraft carriers look like toys. A weapons cache under the ice of Antarctica, containing enough firepower to destroy 1,000 Dominion fleets. A factory in the deep ocean, still running after 60 million years, still producing supplies and equipment. "There are 27 major architect sites on Earth," Cole continued. "Combined, they contain more military power than the entire Dominion. More than enough to win this war." Silence filled the room. It was the silence of people trying to understand something too big for normal thoughts. They had been afraid. They had thought humanity was going to be destroyed. And now they were learning that they had been sitting on top of a sleeping giant the entire time. Commander Jack Sullivan was the first to speak. He had been brought to Earth to help coordinate the military response, and his tactical mind was already working through the possibilities. "How long until we can activate these sites?" he asked. "The crystal contains activation codes," Bennett replied. "The facilities are designed to respond to human touch, human commands. If we send teams to each site, we could have everything online within 48 hours. "Then let's do it," Sullivan said. "The Dominion is gathering their forces. Our scouts report they're assembling the largest fleet in galactic history. They're scared, and scared enemies do desperate things. We need to be ready." The activation began immediately. Across the planet, small teams of humans entered ancient facilities that had waited millions of years for this moment. They touched consoles that lit up at their approach. They spoke commands that the machines somehow understood. They woke the sleeping technology of a civilization that had prepared for this exact situation into bed. Massive hangar doors opened for the first time since before the dinosaurs had walked the Earth. Ships rose into the sky, their golden hulls gleaming in the sunlight. They were beautiful beyond description, elegant and powerful. Designed by minds that understood technology in ways humanity was only beginning to grasp. In Antarctica, weapons systems came online with soft humming sounds. Energy barriers activated, creating shields around the planet that no Dominion weapon could penetrate. Defense platforms launched themselves into orbit, ready to protect Earth from any attack. In the deep ocean, the ancient factory increased its production. New weapons rolled off assembly lines. New ships were constructed in hours instead of years. The machines worked with perfect efficiency, creating everything humanity would need for the war to come. And in Nevada, at the heart of Site Zero, Dr. Bennett made one final discovery. The crystal had one more secret. Hidden within its swirling galaxies was a message. Not a recording, not data. A direct communication, somehow preserved across 60 million years of time. When Bennett activated it, a figure appeared in the center of the chamber. It was humanoid in shape, but made of pure light. Its face was kind. Its voice was warm. "If you are seeing this message," the figure said, "then the time has come. You have awakened. You have remembered. You are ready." The figure spread its arms, and the light grew brighter. "We are the architects. We built the stars. We created life across 1,000 galaxies. And when the silence came for us, we knew we could not win. So we did the only thing we could. We changed." The light began to form images. Humans throughout history. Cave paintings and pyramids and rocket ships. Wars and art and music and science. Everything humanity had ever been. Everything they had ever done. We became you. Our consciousness scattered across billions of minds, sleeping, waiting, growing. Every dream you have ever had of building something greater. Every urge to reach the stars. Every moment of courage and hope and love. That was us. Waking up, remembering who we were. The figure smiled. It was a human smile. "You are not our children. You are us. The same beings who built the stars now walk on 2 legs and breathe air and feel the warmth of your sun on your skin. The power that created galaxies flows through your veins. The minds that solved impossible problems now puzzle over mathematics in your schools." The light began to fade. "We could not defeat the silence. But you can, because you are everything we were, plus 60 million years of growth. You have become something new, something stronger, something we could never have been alone." The figure raised its hand in farewell. "Go now. Protect the galaxy we loved. And when the silence returns, show it what humanity, what we have become." The light disappeared. Bennett stood in the darkness for a long time, tears rolling down her face. She was not crying from sadness. She was crying because she finally understood. All of human history, Every struggle, every triumph, every moment of doubt and fear, it had all been leading to this. Humanity was never alone. They had never been alone. They were the architects, reborn, and the galaxy needed them. She wiped her eyes and picked up her communicator. "Admiral Cole," she said. "It's time. We're ready." On the surface, the sun was setting over Nevada. The sky burned orange and red. And from bases around the world, ships began to rise. Human ships. Architect ships. The fleet of a species that had just remembered who it truly was. Commander Sullivan stood on the bridge of the largest vessel, a ship called the Ascendant. It was 2 miles long and hummed with power that made his skin tingle. Through the viewing window, he could see dozens of other ships taking position around him. "All vessels report ready," Lieutenant Katie Morrison announced from her station. She had transferred to the Ascendant to serve under Sullivan again. Some partnerships were too valuable to break. Sullivan nodded. He looked out at the stars, the same stars he had watched his entire life. But now he saw them differently. Now he saw them as something to protect, something worth fighting for. "Set course for the Dominion capital," he ordered. "It's time to end this war." The Dominion had never seen a fleet like this. Commander Sullivan's armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Velthera system, and every sensor in the Dominion capital went insane. The ships that appeared were unlike anything in galactic records. They were huge, elegant, and radiated power that made the most advanced Dominion technology look like toys. 57 vessels, each one between 1 and 3 miles long. Each one carrying weapons that could crack planets. High Arbiter Zelkoth stood on the bridge of his command station, watching the human fleet approach. Around him, officers ran frantically, trying to coordinate a defense that everyone knew was hopeless. The Dominion had assembled everything they had. 10,000 warships from every corner of their empire, the largest fleet in galactic history, gathered in a desperate attempt to stop the human threat. 10,000 ships against 50-7 dot, and Zelkoth knew it would not be enough. "High Arbiter," his communications officer said, "the humans are hailing us." Zelkoth straightened his posture. He would face this with dignity, whatever came next. "Put them through." Commander Sullivan's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm, not angry, not vengeful, just calm. "High Arbiter Zelkoth," Sullivan said. "I am Commander Jack Sullivan of the human fleet. I am offering you a chance to end this war without further bloodshed." Zelkoth's mandibles clicked nervously. "You expect us to surrender?" "No," Sullivan replied. "I expect you to listen." Sullivan paused, choosing his next words carefully. He had thought about this moment for a long time. He had thought about what he wanted to say, what humanity wanted to say. 1 week ago, you declared war on humanity. You called us primitive. You called us insects. You said we were a threat that needed to be destroyed. Sullivan leaned forward slightly. "You were right. We are a threat. But not to you." On every Dominion ship, on every planet in their empire, screens lit up with new images. Images from human historical records. Images from the crystal in Site Zero. Images of the silence, the darkness at the edge of the galaxy, the enemy that had driven the architects into their long sleep. "There is something coming," Sullivan continued. "Something ancient. Something hungry. It came for our ancestors 60 million years ago, and our ancestors could not stop it. So they prepared. They created us. They left us weapons. They gave us 60 million years to grow stronger." Sullivan's expression softened. "We are not your enemies, High Arbiter. We never were. And the proof of that is simple. If we wanted revenge, we could take it right now. Your fleet cannot stop us. Your empire cannot survive our weapons. We could destroy everything you have ever built in a matter of hours. He spread his hands. But we didn't come here to destroy. We came here to ask for peace. We came here to warn you about what's coming. And we came here to offer you something that the architects never had: allies. Jelkuth stared at the screen. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly as he processed what he was hearing. Why? He finally asked. Why would you offer us anything? We threatened to enslave your entire species. We sent fleets to kill your people. Why would you show us mercy? Sullivan smiled. It was a sad smile, full of understanding. Because 60 million years ago, our ancestors faced the end alone. They were powerful, but they were proud. They thought they could handle everything themselves. They were wrong. The silence was stronger than they expected. They lost everything. He shook his head. We won't make that mistake. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We want to protect it. And we can't do that alone. For a long moment, nothing happened. The 2 fleets hung in space, facing each other, waiting. Then Jelkuth did something he had never done in his entire life. He bowed his head. Stand down, he ordered his fleet. All ships, stand down. The battle that never happened ended in silence. Dominion weapons powered down. Human ships held their fire. 2 civilizations that had been ready to destroy each other instead chose something different. They chose hope. The negotiations took 3 days. Representatives from all 17 Dominion species met with human diplomats on neutral ground. Old grudges were set aside. Old fears were addressed. The truth about the architects, about humanity, about the silence that was coming. It spread through the galaxy like ripples on a pond. Some species didn't believe it at first. Some were angry. Some were afraid. But the evidence was impossible to ignore. The human weapons were real. The architect technology was real. The recordings from Site Zero showed things that no one could fake. And slowly, carefully, the galaxy began to change. The Dominion Council voted to dissolve itself. Not because they were forced to, but because they realized their old way of doing things, ruling through fear and threats, it wouldn't work anymore. A new council was formed. One that included humans. One that treated all species as equals. On Earth, Dr. Laura Bennett continued her research. The crystal had more secrets to reveal. Coordinates of other architect caches, hidden on hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. Species that had never found them. Species that didn't know what was buried beneath their feet. We can't just give them the weapons, Bennett explained to Admiral Cole. The architects left those caches for a reason. Each species was supposed to find them when they were ready, when they had grown enough to use them wisely. Cole nodded. But we can guide them, help them, make sure they're prepared when the time comes. Exactly. The galaxy had declared war on humans. Now humans were helping the galaxy prepare for a war that would make everything else look small. 5 years passed. Then 10. Then 20. Commander Sullivan, now Admiral Sullivan, stood on the bridge of the Ascendant and watched ships from a dozen different species train together. Dominion vessels flew alongside human ships. Crystalline fighters from Vorath's world practiced formations with insectoid cruisers. The old enemies had become partners. Katie Morrison, who had become his second in command, walked up to stand beside him. "Do you think we're ready?" she asked. "When the silence comes, do you think we can win?" Sullivan thought about the question for a long time. He thought about the architects, who had ruled the galaxy and still lost. He thought about the 60 million years of preparation. He thought about how far humanity had come and how far they still had to go. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know we have something the architects never had. We have each other. Every species in the galaxy, working together. That has to count for something." Morrison smiled. "It counts for a lot." Far away, at the edge of the galaxy, something stirred. The silence had been waiting, watching, learning. It had felt the architects wake from their long sleep. It had tasted the fear of the Dominion and the hope of humanity. Soon, it would come. Soon, the final battle would begin. But this time, the galaxy would not face it alone. This time, the heirs of the architects stood ready. Human and alien alike, united in purpose. Armed with weapons forged by beings who had once created stars. The galaxy had declared war on humans. Now, humans would lead the galaxy into its greatest war. And somehow, against all odds, they were ready. Admiral Sullivan looked out at the stars one last time. The same stars he had watched his entire life. The same stars the architects had built millions of years ago. Whatever comes next, he said quietly, we'll face it together. The fleet powered up its engines. The future was waiting. And humanity, for the first time in 60 million years, was finally awake.